Welcome, Buckeye Serve leaders and advisors, to our pre-departure meeting. This is your Buckeye Serve staff, and we have some information to share with you to get you ready to leave on your upcoming Buckeye Serve trips. Our agenda today includes talking about transportation, hotels, and how to basically get to your service sites. We are going to talk about some specific things involving risk on your trips. So, things like talking about waivers, emergencies, driving, policies and procedures, and things that you need to know before you leave. We will go through trip materials that you'll receive right before you leave and talk about alumni clubs, social media, and our financial training, which will be kind of part two of this presentation. Our first step that we want to make sure that you know is that you will have an on-call staff member while you are traveling on your trip. That staff member will be your on-call staff member for the entire week while you are gone, and that person will be listed on your information packet that you pick up before your trip departs. You will need to contact that person when you arrive at your site and when you arrive back in Columbus. And that person will help you with any issues or questions that you have during your trip. And please, we want you to call that person if you run into any of those things. No matter what time, no matter what's going on, that person is there for you. And we want to make sure that you are staying in contact with them. When you get to your site, please send a text to your on-call staff member, and it should include which trip you are on, your name, and your location. If you stop at a hotel somewhere along the way, please let your on-call staff member know that you've arrived at the hotel, and then also, again, once you get to your final destination. Our next part of the presentation is to talk about transportation. We generally use vans, buses, rental cars, and flights to get you all to your individual trip locations. Most of the time, we're talking about vans and buses, and that's what mostly will be covered in this presentation. The first topic is to talk about vans, and most of the vans that we use come from Transportation and Traffic Management, which is TTM, which is our transportation office on campus. The vans that we get from TTM are 12 passenger vans, and the drivers of the vans must be 21 or older and have a driver's license that's been submitted and on file to Buckeye Serve. Those driver's licenses, if this is one of your trips and you are using a TTM van, you can send those driver's licenses to our Buckeye Serve email as it displays on the screen. Once we have the keys for your van, we'll receive them on the day before your trip departs campus, and we will have them available with your group's pre-departure bag. Those pre-departure sessions are generally scheduled for the day before your trips depart, but please refer to the schedule for your specific trip cycle and semester for the exact times and locations. The vans can be picked up from TTM, which is located on 2500 Kenny Road, and they are sitting in the lot and waiting for you to pick them up. You can do that no earlier than 4 a.m. on your departure morning, and you should write the starting mileage on the log sheet that will be provided to you with the keys. You can leave your personal vehicles in the Kinney Road lot with a valid parking pass, a campus parking pass. If you do not have a valid campus parking pass, please talk with a Buckeye Surf staff member to identify the best way for you to be able to drop off and pick up your car from that lot. When you return to campus, you'll return those keys that also come with a Voyager card and a red envelope that we are going to give you at your pre-departure. You'll return all of that with the log sheet to TTM. TTM has a drop box on the building where you are taking the van back to, and you'll notice that drop box is underneath an awning at the front door of TTM. You'll write the final mileage on your log sheet so that we can help them with the billing for the reservation, and then you can leave everything in the Dropbox. This map shows the location of TTM on Kenny Road in relation to Central Campus. If you have other questions about how to find the building or where the vans will be, please let the Buckeye Surf staff know. We sometimes have advisors and leaders or participants who are looking for what to do with their personal vehicle. As I mentioned, you can park at TTM with a campus permit and you can leave your car there for the week. Many trips depart from the Ohio Union, but the Union garages are not approved for overnight parking. So if you have individual situations where you need to be able to park a car on campus while you are gone for the week, please consult Campus Park with your individual questions. Each semester, we usually arrange a test drive for vans if that's something that participants are wanting and some of our drivers are needing to have a little bit of experience with driving that large vehicle. If that's something that you want and you haven't seen information on a test drive, please contact someone in the Buckeye Serve office and we can help make that connection between you and our TTM staff. Our other set of rental vehicles that we usually use are enterprise rental vehicles. The university has a contract with Enterprise at this time, and we use that contract to make our rental vehicles with Enterprise. We often use this solution if we don't have enough 21 and older drivers on your trip to be able to have a TTM reservation. So if we need to do that, we can make the enterprise reservation, and the drivers for this van reservation can be 18 and up instead of 21 and up. We use a location that's located in Reynoldsburg to be able to rent our vans. We also have used a location that is closer to campus, and we'll make those decisions based on what's available at the time that we need to make the reservations. Please have your drivers arrange the pickup time with our Buckeye Serve staff so you know when and where to pick up the vehicle. And when you return, these enterprise locations locally in Columbus all close on Saturdays before you probably will return to campus. So they have after hours key drop boxes, and we ask that you leave the keys there and leave the vehicles there where you rented the vehicle. As I said, you can work with the Buckeye Serve staff to plan for a way to get all the drivers back and forth from these locations. And when you make your stop at the Enterprise, please decline any extra insurance that is requested on the Enterprise contract. Those insurance things are all included on the Enterprise contract that we have for the university, and we don't want to be billed twice. The next type of transportation we'll talk about is buses. If your group is departing on a bus, this information is for you. All of our buses leave from the Ohio Union, and you'll want to consult the bus itinerary that your group should have to be able to see what times your trip will depart and will arrive at your destinations. All of the buses will leave from the Ohio Union, and if your bus leaves before 9 o'clock in the morning, you want to make sure that your participants know that the building is not open here at the Union. You'll want to check the hours of the Union actually for your particular break period and make sure the time that the building will open that morning. So if they're needing any sort of facilities, food, beverages, bathrooms, anything like that, they'll want to make those arrangements to do that before they come to the Ohio Union to actually load the bus. Please, like I said, look at your bus itinerary to make sure that you know your departure and arrival times. It will also give you information about possible times that you might stop for breaks along the way. You can also make those decisions with your driver as you go along your route. You'll get to know your drivers, and so you can make those decisions as you go along. Not all of the buses have Wi-Fi or phone charging, electricity at the seats, or potentially DVDs that are broadcasted to the buses. So please plan that accordingly for your participants. Make sure they know that they may or may not have those luxuries on the bus. So go ahead and bring what they need for their own personal entertainment while they're sitting there on the bus during your trip. When you return back to campus, some of you will find that your bus itineraries show that you need to meet your bus on potentially on a Friday or on Saturday, depending on how long it takes you to get back to campus. So please note that time and make sure if you need to drive back to your bus that you allow time for that return trip from your service site to get to the bus so that the bus can depart with all participants on time. Many of our groups that travel on buses will use enterprise vehicle reservations, much like I described on a couple of slides ago. You will get dropped off at an enterprise location if you have rental cars, and you'll pick up your cars from that enterprise location. Most of those locations are at airports because they are open for us on the weekends and at some odder hours when you might be arriving at those locations. If you need to continue to drive on from that location, then prepare your participants for that plan and know just because they had a lot of space on the bus doesn't mean they'll have a lot of space for lots of luggage in the rental vehicles. So don't overpack. The drivers for these vehicles can be named at the time of rental. We don't need to have the driver's licenses given to us here in Buckeye Serve beforehand, but you'll need to have driver's licenses for the drivers once you get to the enterprise location. The drivers will need to be the driver of that car for the week. You won't be able to swap people between rental vehicles that are drivers, so you'll want to make the decision of who was going to take on that responsibility for the week. And one of the drivers who is on your reservation for one of your cars will need to be someone who's also named on the Get card. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about the financial training in the second half of this presentation. Again, we ask that you just decline all extra insurance on the rental agreement when you are going through that process. We include that insurance in all of the contracted rates with Enterprise, so we don't want to pay for them twice. You will pay for the vehicle rental with the Get card that is used with your group. So generally it's your advisor, and in some cases it may be a trip leader, will have a Get card available for that purchase. We ask that the person who's making that purchase please obtain the final receipts when you return your cars at the end of the week. You'll need that final receipt when we are doing your reconciliation of all of your receipts after the trip. Now that we've talked about how you are getting there, let's talk about hotel stops. Some of you will know that you have a 2-day trip in the van or you need to stay in a hotel somewhere along the way, and that's fine. If you need to stop, stop. Those that plan to stop or that should plan to stop are ones who have more than 12 hours of driving to get there in one day, or those who are taking a bus, but you still have a longer drive after you get off the bus to actually get to your destination. So please talk with your Buckeye Serve staff members, the Buckeye Serve trip mentor, and discuss the details of your transportation that is outlined on your transportation document that you have information on the Carmen page. To secure a hotel stop, this is also something that whoever your Get card carrier is for your trip will use the Get card to be able to secure a hotel. Need that person to determine where you're going to stop, both on the way there and on the way back, depending on where you're making stops, to contact the hotel to make a reservation. Your budget for a reservation is that we ask that for a group of 10 that your total budget is $1,000. That would be $500 for going to your service site and $500 for on the way back. We ask that you not prepay for a reservation. We appreciate that some of you like to use things like Expedia or Booking.com, but those websites make you pay for things in advance. And when you do that, you don't have a way to cancel it if you needed to. You never know when you might be delayed by weather or illness or in a flat tire. And we don't want to end up having to pay for two separate hotels because we weren't able to get a refund on your Expedia reservation. So please call directly to a hotel and do not charge anything until you actually get to your hotel site. You can use though that Get card to hold rooms and then to pay for the reservation once you check in or check out where they ask for the Get card. When you check out, please ask for an itemized receipt and something that shows proof of payment. So it will show a zero balance, and this is something that is usually pretty easy to get from a hotel because they'll be able to give you the itemized receipt for each room. And something else that you'll want to watch for, and we'll talk more about in the financial training, is if you are staying in a location that is a state that's tax exempt for us, we'll want you to make sure that they remove the state tax from your hotel reservation. You may also see that other types of taxes, hotel taxes, local taxes, may stay on the reservation, and that's okay. We just want to have the state tax reversed. And like I said, we'll talk about that once we get to the Get card training.
Okay, we are going to move on from transportation and talk about a few other things. So, first, you all and your trip participants and your advisors will be receiving waivers, and these are required for everyone going on a Buckeye Serve experience. You will all be emailed a link to these waivers in the coming few weeks, and there are 3 waivers total for everyone to fill out. The first one is just a general waiver of liability. The second one is an agreement to being substance free for this Buckeye Serve experience. And the third is an emergency contact information sheet. And this third one includes brief information about any allergies or health concerns that a participant might want to disclose that could affect them during this Buckeye Serve week. And it also makes everyone list an emergency contact person with a phone number. And these emergency contact waivers will be printed and they will be given to all of you leaders before you depart. So if anything were to happen, you could pull out this emergency contact waiver and have access to contact for what a student might need. If you receive any further roster changes in the coming weeks, if you can remember to send them this waiver link again, as maybe someone is added to your trip so that they know they need to fill these out as well. And all three of these need to be completed before they get on the bus. If they are not, you will know and you will have to track them down on the bus to fill them out right then and there before you pull away and head to your site. There is a fourth waiver called an early departure waiver, and I will talk about this in the next slide, but these waivers will be in your pre-departure bag and they can be filled out in the car or bus. So that fourth waiver, the early departure waiver, has to deal with anyone who is leaving early from you as a group at the end of your Buckeye Serve week. So sometimes students have family members in the area that you are serving, or they have to get to another commitment and they do not want to travel back to Columbus with you all, whether it be in your van or on your bus. If this is the case, it is okay that they depart from you all at the end of the week after all service is complete, but they need to sign this early departure waiver stating a few things. And it basically is saying that we, as the university, are not responsible for them when they choose to leave you all. So when they get on a plane or when they go with a family member instead of coming back to Columbus, they're kind of on their own for all liability and all costs. One thing to consider when students are asking you if they can leave you all before returning back to Columbus is if your group would then have enough drivers to still get back to Columbus. So remember earlier we talked about, drivers need to be 18 and up or 21 and up, depending on which vehicles you are renting. So consider if group members are leaving, how many drivers will you have to get back to Columbus? Okay, we're going to kind of go back to some rental car concerns, especially when it comes to emergencies. So, first and foremost, if you have not yet talked to your service site or housing site about cell service in the area, please add that on your to do list. So, you need to assess first if you will have access to cell service. And if you do not, that will affect how you handle these emergencies. And you should be communicating that ahead of time with all parents and families of your participants so that they know that their students will not be able to daily text and update them on kind of where you are and what you're doing. So, with that being said, if you have flat tires or any mechanical troubles with the vehicles you are renting, first of all, assess any physical concerns. Is everyone okay in the group? Are there any minor injuries? Is anyone hurt? Second of all, move the vehicle out of the way of traffic if that's possible. Otherwise, call authorities immediately to help you do that. And then third, let your Buckeye Serve contact person, remember that on-call person that you have for the week, let them know what is going on. They can be a point for consultation if you're unsure of what to do next. And then from there, it will likely depend on what kind of vehicle you have. So, did you rent a vehicle from campus? Do you have an enterprise vehicle? And depending on where you rented them from or where we rented them for you, they will have different instructions on who to call and what to do next. If you encounter a little bit more of an issue in terms of an accident, not a flat tire, but you rear end someone, someone else rear ends you, you clash with another vehicle at any point. Again, physical concerns first, move the vehicles out of the way if possible. But this is the difference. You have to file a report, no exceptions. So even if it's a minor fender bender, even if you don't think there's any scratches and everyone seems fine, you cannot drive away until you call the police and file a report. And that's because of the university's policies and us wanting to ensure that we have documentation of everything everything in case later on we find issues. So after you file that report, again, you can contact the rental vehicle provider and assess what to do next. To contact your Buckeye Serve on Call person to again let them know what is going on and give them an update. Okay, this is super important as well. If you are a driver or any of your participants are driving and you get pulled over or have a ticket for some reason, the person driving at that time is responsible for paying. So this includes general traffic stops, a speeding ticket, a parking ticket, especially for those of you that are going to locations in city. If someone parked the van in the wrong place and later there's a ticket on the car, that person is responsible. Two, if you drive through one of those red light cameras, we will eventually get that photo of who was driving at that time. And so that person will then have to pay back. Any tickets cannot be paid with that Get card, that university credit card. You cannot put them on the gas card, which is the Voyager card. You cannot ask everyone in the group to, contribute $10 to pay for that ticket. It's up to that driver to be responsible for it. Okay, continuing on with just some more emergency concerns. If you are especially driving your own vehicles and you encounter inclement weather, first of all, get to a safe spot. Please stop driving, assess the conditions, kind of see what the roads are going to do. So, whether it be a heavy rainstorm, a snowstorm, depending on the time of year that your Buckeye Surf trip is going and the location that you are on your way to, see what you all can do to just kind of take a break and get off the road, wait until a storm passes. Contact your on call person once again, see if they can help you approve a plan for action, especially if it doesn't look like a storm is going to pass until overnight. We will work with you to determine if we need to put you all in a hotel until weather improves and you can get back the next day. All right, moving on from some of the vehicle emergencies and talking about medical emergencies. If you or any of your group members encounter a medical emergency, if it's urgent, of course, go to the local hospital or medical facility, call 911, call an ambulance if you need it. If it's routine and not urgent, just help the individual get the appropriate medical assistance. So whether that be utilizing something from your first aid kit, or maybe they just need to sit out and stay at the housing site and not participate in service for a day until they feel better, do whatever you need to do. We do ask that no one be left alone. So if someone is sick for a day, utilize your co-leader or your advisor to stay back with them and kind of make sure they're okay. Meanwhile, the rest of you continue on with your service. If anyone does have to utilize a hospital or a clinic of any sort, the individual who's receiving the care is still responsible for those medical claims, any copays, any charges that they incur to go to that doctor or hospital. Worst case, they have an ambulance ride. They will be responsible for that ambulance ride. And so everyone in your group should be carrying their insurance card and they should know their insurance plans, policies for using that insurance while maybe out of the state of Ohio. For you leaders and advisors, please just be available in any medical situation to answer questions and listen to concerns. Try not to shrug it off or make anyone still participate if they are having medical concern. Be attentive and listen and help when you can. For any health emergencies or even illness, if you can call your on-call person again to just let them know what's going on, let them know which student, aren't feeling well or who's receiving care, and then they can help you with a plan of action for the week, especially if it turns out that someone might not be able to stay the rest of the week with you all. In all cases of emergency or medical concerns, our first priority is safety for everyone. And so if this means that you need to divide and conquer, like I mentioned earlier, if an advisor needs to stay back or a leader needs to stay back, meanwhile the rest of you kind of continue on with the experience, do so. Just kind of divide and conquer, make sure everyone is okay. Just to wrap up some general emergencies. First, how will you contact your participants in the case of an emergency? So if you have access to phones and everyone has one, great. If you do not have access to self-service, what's your plan of action for getting in contact with everyone? Even if you plan to have phones, what if phones go out or you are in an area that all of a sudden doesn't have service? Create a meeting plan or a communication plan for how everyone can get in contact, especially if perhaps you're in a service site where you're splitting up for the day and you are all kind of doing different tasks at different locations. Think that through. And if there is a crisis or a large emergency, Where is your centralized gathering place? Is it going to be back at the housing site? Is it going to be at the main service site? And then just be aware of all your surroundings and distractions as you navigate new places. So, a lot of you are going to places where maybe no one in your group has ever been. Be considering where your housing is, what routes you're driving on a daily basis to and from service, and ask any questions of concern before you go.
In this next section, we're going to cover some university policy information, some things that we want you to be aware of and that are available to you to be able to pass along to your participants and to be able to address things that may come up while you are on your trip. As you may or may not know, the Code of Student Conduct also applies to off-campus conduct of students, and that includes everyone who is participating in our Buckeye Serve program. That may come into play when you are talking about things like the substance-free policy that we have within Buckeye Serve, or it may come up in many different ways. So that is your resource for knowing how we are hoping people will participate in their trips. And we hope that you can pass that information along to your students as a good reminder before they are set loose on a new city someplace else other than Columbus. One of the specific things within that Code of Student Conduct and that we have on campus at our disposal is our policy for sexual misconduct. And this policy actually applies to all Ohio State faculty, staff, and students. So not just our students who are on the trip, but also our faculty and staff who are advisors on the trip. So we want to make sure that you all know that this policy applies for all of you. And you can see there on the screen the link to our Title IX section of the website in Student Life. And I also didn't mention it, but the student conduct link is there too. So those resources are there for you, and we'd like you to take a look at them and know what that information is. We also want to make sure that all of our participants know that our programs are available for all students. So if there is a participant that identifies a disability and needs to request any accommodations related to that disability to be able to travel with you on your trip, please contact one of the Buckeye Serve staff members prior to the trip. And you can see the link to our Student Life Disability Services there on the screen. We hope that at this point we have identified any of these issues, but if not, and you become aware of something and you're not sure if it's been reported to Buckeye Serve, we would be happy to hear that information and follow up with any individual students. We want to make sure that not only your service site, but also any housing site, and that we talk through any transportation needs, any of those things, that we do all of that well in advance of the trip so no one is surprised when you actually go to get on your van or your bus for the trip. As advisors, this information is specific to you. This slide that we have up here has to do with crime reporting. So advisors, I jokingly say, but with all seriousness, you can add this on your resume now, that you are now, as our Buckeye Serve advisor, taking on the responsibility of being a campus security authority. So what that means is simply that we collect crime information for the annual campus crime report that's required through the Clery Act. If you become aware of any crime while you are on your trip or at your housing sites, please forward that information to Buckeye Serve so that we can determine whether that information needs to be reported for our Clery reporting. If you are encountering any crime on your trip, we hope that you are in contact with your on-call staff member anyway, but we do have a place when you return your receipts, there's a post-trip quick report for you to do, and there is a place for you to note any crime that you may have encountered. Mostly what we need to know are anything that happens directly to or with your students while you are on the trip, but also at your housing site. Sometimes the definition of what is a campus area, what is under our control, is may include one of our off-campus housing sites where you are traveling to. So if you can let us know if you become aware of any crime that happens at your housing site, whether or not it involves your group, we would appreciate knowing that for our reporting purposes. You don't have to go, for instance, if you're at a hostel, you don't have to go to the hostel front desk every day to ask if there has been any crime at that location that day. But we do ask that if you become become aware of it, you hear that maybe across the hall there's another group staying there and one of them had a laptop stolen out of their room, just pass that information along to us with the date and time that you knew about it, and we can pass that on through our administration to determine if that needs to be part of the Clery reporting. Some other policies we want to cover, just for your reference, we've talked a couple of times just briefly about the substance-free policy. The substance-free policy is something that's included on one of the waivers that all of your participants will sign. So we hope that no one at any point will be able to say that they were unaware of the policy. But please reinforce this policy with your participants a couple of times during the trip to make sure that that information doesn't bypass anyone's point of reference while they are traveling on the trip. This policy includes all participants, whether they're 21 or not. If they're not, it shouldn't be an issue anyway, but whether anyone is 21 or not, over 21 or under 21, if they're a participant, a leader, or an advisor, we ask that they follow the substance-free policy. If the policy is not followed, then this is a place where, as leaders and advisors, you might have to step in and start to have some conversations about what to do next. So we'd ask that you call your on-call person and we'll make the decisions about what needs to happen next. If there needs to be just further follow-up with a student or a group of students, if we need to do any sort of investigating quickly on the fly, and then if we need to make any arrangements for anyone to make their own transportation and leave the group. So we'll make those decisions back here with the Buckeye Surf staff. For your group activity, we will talk in a few slides further in the presentation. We'll talk more specifically about the funds that are available for group activity. But we also, just in general, when you are having group activities, we ask that you include your whole group in how you're going to use those funds. I know for larger groups that might not actually be very much possible because you're going to have so many people. So you might just have a smaller group who are making some of the decisions. But we'd like you to think about the food needs for your group as a priority for using those group funds. So if you definitely don't have any food included in your trip price and you're having to purchase a lot of food during the week, then please consider using those group funds for your group. But if not, or if your group all decides that they'd rather use the funds for something else, that's completely fine. We've had groups use it for museum entry, to go roller skating or ice skating, go to a movie, attend a show of some sort. It's completely fine. Anything that would bring your group together, we would like you to use that group activity money to do that, and it should include everyone. And then a free time policy, it's not really so much a policy, but just a good practice. We'd ask you to not allow your participants to go off on their own. We'd like to ask that everyone have some sort of a buddy system, and we don't want anybody to be left alone during free time. If there is some sort of GroupMe or cell phone list or text message list that you're using, please use that to keep in contact if you split up during your free time so that you can get in contact with each other, arrange meeting times, things like that. The free time that you have on your trip, we kind of look at that as time that means you're not doing service, you're not doing reflection, and you don't have any designated group activities that you're doing. So it's kind of time outside of those pieces of the trip that you are definitely doing all together. If you can encourage any sort of additions to your group schedule that are cultural, things that tell you more about the place where you are, the history of the site, or any sort of educational aspect that goes along with the social justice topic that you are exploring as you're going through your service and your reflection, we encourage you to find those things in your service site locations. This last slide for this section is just a reference to helping individuals that are having a difficult time at some point during your trip. If you click on the link here on the screen, it will take you to the actual full guide and more direction on the Counseling and Consultation Services website. We are happy to provide this just as a quick glimpse at something that can give you some information about what to do in one of these situations. We don't have the time or requirement right now of having all of our faculty and staff advisors and or leaders do lots of training specifically with CCS or any of our other resources that we have on campus. If you are someone who doesn't already work with students and hasn't gone through any sort of training with these areas, we're happy to make that connection with that office and have you go through any of those sort of training programs or follow-ups to be able to talk more about how you just talk with students when there is a problem and what you can do to help someone guide through that. But your main resource in this area is to call your Buckeye Serve on-call staff member, and we will be looking at these same resources and talking through these same issues to kind of identify what a good next step is and how to help a student if they are in distress.
Okay, as mentioned before, you all have that activity budget for your group, and you can determine as a group how you want to use it. But I want to circle back to the food plans. So each one of your trips has different food plans. Some of your sites provide every meal, some of your sites only one meal a day, and some of you all don't have any meals provided for you. And so that's definitely something if you do not know what your food plan is for where you're headed to ask your housing and service site now so that you all can plan accordingly. But that activity budget can be used for food, especially if you have a grocery store nearby. That might be another thing to consider. And you can go do some group shopping, get sandwiches, snacks, breakfast little munchies, and that can decrease that cost for everybody. This is a breakdown on your screen right now of what kind of funds you should be receiving depending on your group size. It's $20 per person, so you can figure that out. These funds cannot be used for alcohol and drugs. Hopefully that's self-explanatory, but also not for gifts. So maybe you had a really great time at your service site and you want to give the person who was working with you flowers. You cannot use this set of money for that, but you can pass the hat among your group and collect, a few bucks from everybody out of their own pockets and then purchase a gift. These funds can also not be used for individual expenses, such as maybe you all are getting on the bus and you all want to buy some magazines and candy for you all. That's something that we do not want to spend these funds in, and everyone can buy their own magazine again out of their own pocket. And these funds can also not be used for a service site donation. So maybe your service site is putting on a meal program and you want to donate your $200 to that meal program. We ask that you don't do that. And again, you pass the hat if you all want to donate, because the Buckeye Serve program has already paid for a lot of these sites and made donations on behalf of your group already. Okay, we're going to start to talk about what are you getting before you depart from the Buckeye Serve staff. Usually on the Friday before your departure in the Ohio Union from approximately 3 to 5 p.m., you will be required to come by the Union and pick up a bag full of materials. We prefer that it be leaders and advisors that come to pick this up, but if for some reason that group cannot make it, we can discuss if a participant can pick it up for you. But in these materials will be this whole list of things. So I'm just going to run through it really quickly and explain anything that might need more detail. So for those of you that are driving vans from campus, your van keys will be in this bag. So that's why it's so important that you come and get this, because if you don't, then on departure day, you have no way of going to get your vehicle. You will also have a gas card if you have rented your vehicles from campus, and that will be in this packet as well. Again, super important that you come and get it because otherwise you won't be able to pay for gas. We will print a final roster for you all so that day before you depart, you know exactly who is on your roster and who should be there the next day in your van or on your bus. We will print off all those emergency contact forms and waivers that your group was required to fill out. We will have blank waiver forms for anyone who did not complete their waivers on time, or for those who have indicated that they need to leave your group early or they will not be returning to Columbus with you. Every group will have a first aid kit. This is when you will get your group shirt. We will also provide a journal if we have one. So we've had journals that have been passed around from year to year, and groups have written tips or suggestions or just reflections. So you can get that journal so you can look back and read through it and kind of use that to set the tone for your week. We will also have just any little office or craft reflection supplies such as markers and pens and paper that you all can use for your reflection activities as a group. We'll throw some thank you cards in there, so if you want to write a thank you to the people that you've worked with during the week and leave that behind. We will not include driving directions. It is up to you all as a group to know, if you are driving your own vehicles from Columbus, how you're getting to your destination and the address of your destination. This is when you will also receive your Buckeye Serve on-call person's information. We'll provide an email and a direct cell phone number for them. That way you can at least know who they are. You can start to connect that day before you leave. And then occasionally we include donation check or payments that we didn't quite get out in time and we need you to hand deliver them for us when you check in with your housing and service site. We'll let you know if that is the case. Again, just a quick reminder, don't forget to have that point person who's coming to the Ohio Union on that Friday before you depart to get all of the materials that we just spoke about. Check back with the Buckeye Serve staff or your mentor that's been working with you from the advisory board on this exact time and location each semester, as it may change. The alumni meetups. So most of you, if you have not already heard, should have contact with alumni in your area. This is something that the Buckeye Serve program has done for quite a long time. It's a great networking event where the Buckeye Serve group gets to connect with alumni from the university who live in that area. You can exchange stories on Ohio State. They want to know what you all are up to here on campus. You can hear about how they've been successful in their careers. And so most meetups will occur on the Monday of your Buckeye Serve week, usually in the evening after most of your service has wrapped up. If you know that that Monday evening is not going to work for you all, and you are in contact with those alumni already, please suggest maybe an alternative date and see if you can negotiate meeting at another time during your Buckeye Serve week. An important reminder is these are still substance-free events, even though you're meeting with alumni. The alumni may engage in having a drink over dinner with you all, but we ask that you all still abstain from having a drink with them if you're over 21. Another thing to consider with these alumni meetups is the cost of that meetup. So some alumni are very generous and they offer to pay for everyone's meals that night, or maybe you're meeting at someone's house and they are providing a home cooked meal for you all. But sometimes they're not able to do that. And so they might say, hey, let's meet at a restaurant and everyone can order whatever they want and pay for it themselves. Just be talking about those details with your participants so that no one is kind of in the dark about what an alumni meetup might cost. A quick note on social media leaders, you should have talked about this in your leader training series, but we want to make sure that we're using our social media during our Buckeye Serve experience in the best way possible. First and foremost, please be aware of your technology use. Phones should be away when you're doing your service. We want to be respectful and attentive to the communities that we're serving. Always ask before you bring out your phones or before you start taking photos during your Buckeye Serve experience. There are some service sites that do not allow photos to be taken for privacy reasons, especially when it involves people and children. If you are allowed to use social media during your Buckeye Serve experience and at your site, use your photos and your social media posts to give a Buckeye shout out or to give a shout out to the site and organization and provide some information on what exactly it is that you're doing, what social issues you're working with. A lot of the organizations that we partner with rely on marketing to get donations and funding for their future work. And so let's help them in that process and make sure that we're not harming the community when we use our social media and phones. The Buckeye Serve program does have different social media accounts. And so if you are sharing some of your experiences during your week, make sure that you share it or tag us so that the Buckeye Serve program can help in sharing the stories of all the great work that you all are doing. Okay, this is a final to-do list, especially for trip leaders and advisors. If you want to be attentive to this as well and kind of assist your trip leaders if they need help with these things, confirm that you've had contact with both your service site and your housing site. Coordinate your arrival and departure time, know your schedule for the week, and most importantly, if you're arriving at a time when maybe the housing that you're arriving to is close, have a phone number for an individual who you can call and contact to let you in. We do not want you to be, arriving in the dark and then not be able to get into your housing site. If you have questions about who these individuals or phone numbers might be, you can contact your Buckeye Serve Trip mentor. That's that advisory board member who's been helping you, and ask them for some help in finding the right contacts and addresses and phone numbers. Leaders, determine how to spend your free time. So you should begin to know exactly what your service hours are for the week. And so when your service is over, begin to talk with your group about what you're doing with your free time. Determine how to use your activity funds. Again, like we said, consider the food that you have for the week. Think about your transportation itinerary. And again, you can consult the Carmen page for information on these details, but confirm your departure time, your estimated time of arrival. And then if you are a group that you know will need hotels, think through what hotels you will need and begin that process. You can also start to begin to think about reflection, if there are any materials that you will need, and what kind of reflection, team building, or icebreaker activities can you as a group be doing. And then last, just thinking through conflict management. Leaders, you should have already been talking through this with your leader training series. Set some norms with your co-leader, and if you have not yet, set those norms with your advisor as well. Our final announcements for this pre-departure training are to consider residence hall closings. Many of you, if not all of you, will have participants who live in the residence halls, and depending on what time of year your Buckeye Serve trip is going, the residence halls might be closing and telling their residents that they need to leave before your Buckeye Serve trip leaves, which means that some of your students might need a place to stay for a night before your Buckeye Serve trip leaves. In the past, a lot of groups will open up their apartments or their own housing to group members and kind of make it a night of spending the night together before they depart the next day. So please consider that. Also, all trip payments for everyone should be complete by the time of this pre-departure presentation. So if you know that you have members who have not yet completed their payments for this Buckeye Serve experience, please give them some friendly reminders. Look for those waivers as they are emailed out to everyone, and again, help your participants be accountable for filling all of those out and getting them in on time.